I'm Dwayne Brummett. He's Ali Alberigo, and this is the School Owner Talk podcast.
Hello again, Dwayne Brummett with Ali Alberigo, SchoolOwnerTalk.com. Ali, great to see you, my sir, my friend.
What's happening? Thank you very much, dude. Good to see you as well, and happy to be here.
Yes, yeah, and I'm excited. I know I say that quite often. I'm really excited today for our conversation with regards to the profitable path. I wish I would have known this in the beginning, navigating the martial arts school percentages in order to grow your school. So,
yeah, I know it's a big one. I mean, I think that probably is one of the hardest things for people to, one, get down and understand, and two, maybe actually do it, knowing and statistics and all that stuff. It's scary for some and scary for a few reasons. One, because they don't know how to do it, and two, because they don't want to know the numbers.
Yeah, ignorance is bliss. So as long as the bills are getting paid, right?
Right. Yeah.
and it's not in the negative, so then therefore we should be good. But that's not always the case.
Right. Absolutely. I know that's the problem, is that we have to, and again, that's where sometimes you could hide. I call it the ostrich syndrome. You hide your head in the sand for a good portion of the time and not take it out, and thinking that everything is going to go away. But then, you keep your head in the sand, or you keep your head in the clouds for too long. Eventually it's going to just come crumbling down real quick, and you'll have no control.
Well, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, when you started your school, although you had a little bit of background in business with regards to your landscaping, I didn't. I mean, I was an assistant meat manager. I was asked to be a meat manager. I knew some of the metrics with regards to what I needed to run our department profitably, but I didn't have to worry about income in a way that I have to worry about income now.
Yeah.
Because whatever slack was happening in the store, it was a super Kmart. So, you had the whole store operating, not just the meat department. So you could take some losses. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And by the way, I mean, I ran a really profitable, highly profitable landscape construction company, but I actually wouldn't do any of the things that I did in my landscape business to be successful in my martial arts school, because there was that stigma, that we all grew up in the early days thinking like, hey, if we made money, we're selling the martial arts out. We're a McDojo. Like if we talked about, programs like, Masters Club or Black Belt Club or Pay in Fulls, we were sellouts, and it took me a long time to realize that there was really no difference. For the first year or so, I didn't realize it, and I fought it. And then finally, when the concept was like, why would it be any different in the martial arts than it would in running a professional business somewhere else? That's when I had to let all those stigmas go, and, those different fears.
Yeah. Well, I just want to let everybody know, stay tuned, because we are going to get into specific actual percentages that are a must if you want to run a profitable school. So hang on, because we're going to give you those percentages as time goes on. But before we get into those actual percentages in order to run your business, I wanted to, kind of chat with you. When you started your school, of course, you didn't do what you were doing in your first entrepreneurial, or at least, commercial entrepreneurial, businesses. Did you, when you ran let's say your landscaping business, did you know that there are certain percentages that you should hit and run your business in order to be profitable? Or were you just, running your business and, obviously you were making black and not red?
No, I think that when I've been a business person my whole life, like since I've been a little kid. Like I always loved selling and making money and profit. And but I had to learn that the hard way. Like here's a funny story. When I was a little kid, my mom took me to a pumpkin farm, and she bought all these little gourds and pumpkins, these tiny little ones, like boxes full of them, right? The minute we got home, my mom said, bring them in the house. And then I came in like 2 hours later. I had made a sign and sold all the pumpkins that we had just bought. Right. So I said, Ma, look what I did. I sold all the pumpkins. I made $10. She goes, Allie, it cost me $25 to buy those pumpkins. And I'm like, oh, okay. So that was like my first lesson where she says, you got to make a profit on, you're just not doing a good job. But she was proud of me. She goes, I'm proud of you that you did sales and you sold it and you made a sign and you marketed it and you stood there and you did it. Now we just got to get the profit thing together. And then I started to learn little by little after that. And with my landscape business, I was very good. But I have to tell you, if I knew then what I know now as how far as running a business goes, I would have made millions back then. Like,
Sure.
Triple of what I was doing. And I was doing very well. It was $1 million company. I had three or four crews out and, doing all that stuff, landscape designing and decking and sprinklers and Japanese gardens. But I did know my numbers pretty well, profitability, but not the matrix like you're talking about now. So that's why I'm excited to hear about that.
Yeah, and I didn't either. And I cannot, nor would I, take ownership of these percentages because it was at the time Professor Hafner, now Grandmaster Hafner, who gave his coaching clients these percentages. And look, when I first got them, to be quite honest with you, I thought, okay, they were guidelines,
right?
But I didn't do anything with it. So I wasn't taking the actual percentages and those numbers and going, okay, where do we fall, in line, and where do we fall short, and how do I make the adjustments,
right, in
order to be profitable, and not only have some good profit, but to have some really healthy profit. And then on a side note, then what to do with that profit, and that's not what this call is, but that would be the next level to this is once you have a profitable school, some options for you as a school owner on what are your, depending on what your values are. And when the reason I use values, I don't want to say goals, but right, depending on what your values are, where you want to actually put that money in order for it to grow for you, for your future. So, but that's not what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I had no idea that I knew I had to make a profit.
Right.
But I didn't know that there were actual guidelines or percentages that a school should operate under in order to, make that profit. But then to give yourself a grade, like to medically, if you will, give yourself a checkup to know where you are hitting the percentages and what you need to do in order to trim some fat in other areas in order to hit those percentages. Does that kind of make sense?
It totally does. And I kind of live my life like that now, like knowing and I, so many times when I coach people and I have to tell you though, this is like pulling teeth to get this done and to really get them to understand. But for me, it's like simple math is the only thing I'm able to do anyway. By the way, I was terrible at math. I'm not good at algebra. I wasn't good at all this other stuff. My mom always said, hey, I could ask you a number. What's 2 + 2? And you wouldn't know. But if I said, how much is $2 + $2? You'd say, oh, it's 4. Right. She said, just put a dollar sign in front of things and you'll be able to figure it out. For me, I think that it's the hardest thing when I'm coaching people to say, okay, what are your expenses? Like, what are your personal expenses to live at your house, and your family? And then what are your business expenses? And then take those totals at the bottom and add them together. And let's just say it's $1,000 each. Now you have $2,000. You have to make $2,000 or more a month to be able to survive. 4,000 is good, 8,000 is better, and then you have money left aside to be able to invest or reinvest or pay down debt and so on and so forth. And I have to tell you though, it's very difficult for people to do. Like, I know to the penny of what my bills are every month. I have a spreadsheet, and every month I go through my checking account, and I literally will go every day. I go on my checking account. I see because everything I have is on auto pay. literally every single bill I have, whether it's Hulu or Netflix or my electric bill, all auto pay. And I just go in and I see, okay, it came out of my checking account, and I check it off on the list to see what bills are due that month and what was paid. And I know at the end of the month, I have to have made X amount of thousands of dollars to pay my bills, and everything left aside is profitable. Like last year, I'm shocked at how much I paid in taxes, but last year was a highly profitable year for myself and my wife. So like I looked at it going like, wow, I didn't realize that I did as well. And I knew every month what I was bringing in, but I'm like, wow, but I hate, now I have to pay taxes on it, which is very painful. Like, that's the painful thing. But when you're making money, you pay the taxes, I guess.
Yeah,
you don't
better
try
than not making money.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, you're right though. The metrics on everything is, so do you have them? You want to share them and like thoughts of the percentages and what people should be looking at?
I do. And the very first one that I want to talk about, and this is one that I've seen that has ruined a lot of school owners, is they get rent heavy.
Right. Yeah.
So they're paying too much out of the gross profit for their rent.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that may not happen for a time to build the revenue to where it needs to be.
Right.
But if you know that you've never hit that, like let's say you're moving from one location to a new location, and you think the new location is going to be better for you, and you're going to be able to service more people because of the visibility or whatever, which that is a fallacy in and of itself, and I can totally debunk that.
Yeah.
And the only reason I say that is because I'm off the beaten path. You wouldn't even know I'm there. I'm in an industrial park, got it zoned commercial, so I pay cheaper rent because it's in an industrial spot anyways, where every single one of my competitors in our area are all in retail location, and they're probably paying, if not, double, at least 1.5 times the amount of rent that I'm paying.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I am one of there's one other school now that is attempting to be a full-time school, and he kind of is, but up until him, I was the only full-time school in our area.
Wow, great.
But so I've seen a lot of schools close even because they were rent heavy. They move into a location and they think, okay, well, because I move into that location, I will be able to attract more students. But you need to know how many students you're going to need in order to be able to pay your rent, but also pay the other expenses with regards to payroll and marketing and miscellaneous expenses and all those things. So there's only a few categories, but the first one is rent.
Okay.
And the exact percentage that you want to be at is no more than 10% of your gross profit should go to rent.
Okay.
So if you if you have let's say you're making 20,000, your rent should not be anything more than 2,000. So that's going to include your taxes, your CAM, everything. So when I say rent, I mean the rent on the building, the taxes, the common area maintenance should not be over 10% of your gross profit.
Right.
If you had to push 12%, I think you could take it from other places, but really 10% or less, is where you'd like to be. Does that make sense?
It totally does. And I've always been careful with that. I've fortunately been able to, out of most of my schools, I bought 2 of my buildings that I had, actually 3. I was able to, 1, get them at a great deal, and 2, pay them down to the point where I had zero rent. Zero mortgage, right? And all I did was pay taxes. And that's where I'm living right now, in my building, paid in full. And all I do is pay the taxes on the building. So like if I were renting in a storefront, I'd probably be, Long Island is a lot more expensive, but you're probably looking at maybe 25% rent these days with buildings, right? So I'm paying way less than that, and I own the building. And then I also pay myself rent on my building so that I'm able to make a profit on the real estate. But I agree with you. People, I've seen this happen when I've coached people that haven't had a school yet, and they're coaching with me and they want to open a school. I always say, be very careful that you don't bite off more than you can chew, because everyone's like, oh, all I need is 100 students. Well, what happens if you don't get 100 students right away? Now you have enough money to last for a good year or two with the payment of that rent. And I saw a huge gym. I don't think it was a UFC, but it was some other famous martial artist, and they bought like this supermarket or rented it out and turned it into like a UFC style gym. And within a few months, and it was huge name recognition, and within a few months they're out of business because they just couldn't cover the cost of their rent, because they thought, hey, I'll just get 300-400 students like that, but it didn't happen.
Yeah. So just be careful, everyone, that you're not rent heavy.
Yeah.
That's going to be very important. And to your point, if you can buy the building and still be at 10% as you're paying off your building, it's just like renting, except better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then look, you and I have had these conversations before about, you asked me, should I buy, should I rent? And I'm like, I've went through different phases in my life where I wanted to be debt free, so I'd pay everything off. Then I wanted to leverage the bank's money, and I didn't want to have any, worry about that. And I'd use all their money, right? And then I was like to the point where I just want to rent. I don't want to be the landlord. I don't want to be the owner. I don't want to have to be responsible. So I've went through all those phases in my mindset and mentality throughout my 33 years of being in the business. But I'm so glad, like my last 2 buildings that I own that were in my schools, one I sold during COVID for an extremely good amount of money. So it was something like that offer I couldn't refuse kind of thing. And then I condensed it all down to my East Islip location, which I love that school anyway. It's got an acre of outdoor property, an obstacle course, an archery range, like all this cool stuff. But it's very inexpensive to operate there, other than, the normal costs of electric and oil, heat, and other than that. So like, I think that's good if you could do that. But nowadays it's a little difficult. Real estate's very expensive.
Right now it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, right now it is. But I think, again, that's where it would be smart to, not get a retail space, see if you can get a commercial space.
Right.
And have it zoned, an industrial space, and have it zoned commercial.
Right.
So that you're not paying commercial rent, you're paying industrial rent.
Yeah. And you and I are both, I think you've been to my second school, but I'm so far off the beaten path that when you drive down that road, it's all normal houses, like it's residential homes, and then a commercial building, and more residential homes, and then another. There's only like 3 commercial buildings on my entire block. So when people come to me, they're like, am I in the wrong spot? Yeah. Like only the neighbors who live on those blocks drive down that neighborhood. So like everybody that I bring, they're driven to my school by marketing. So like, just like you, commercial, people are not driving down your industrial park. Like when I went to visit you,
it's a dead end.
It's a dead end. It's in an industrial park, right? Like it's there, but no one's going to go there looking for a school or just go, hey, there's, you have to be in that area for a specific reason.
Yep, exactly. And that leads us to, you brought it up because you brought up the word marketing. That leads us to the marketing budget.
Mm-hmm.
So the marketing budget should be 20%. So 20% of your gross profit should go into marketing. So, and I don't just mean, you're going to do 20% of your gross profit in Facebook ads. That includes Facebook. That includes your Google. That includes your website. That includes, the donations that you make to, be wherever. Like,
family groups, PTAs, things like that.
Yeah. So marketing in totality is only up to 20% of your gross profit, especially, and look, it's not that you can't back off on the marketing. Sometimes, I've been at 10% of my budget before,
right?
But when you want to grow your business, or sometimes even have to maintain, you got to bump it up. So growing your business, you got to be at 20%.
Yeah. So think about that. So like if you're grossing 20 grand, you want to be spending at minimum of $2,000 a month. No, $4,000 a month.
For 20%.
Right. For 20%. Right. So if it's, if you're doing that so you're looking at around $4 grand that's going into different marketing. And
well, it'd be 20% of
20,000.
Yeah. So you're right. Yeah, 4,000 a month.
Right. So, but here's the thing. I would say 95% of the martial art businesses out there pay nowhere near that amount in marketing. They're lucky, like, when I talk to clients or Gus, who we do our marketing with from Lead Hunter Media, I mean, they're very like, oh, I can't afford $500. I don't have the money, or I don't want to spend the money, or I'm afraid to spend the money. But you need to be marketing. It's amazing. I pulled out a folder the other day out of my closet back here, and I have like a stack this high of all laminated flyers and ads that were in the local papers from my school and other competitors. Like I used to I'd see, oh, Joe's Karate. I'd cut it out of the paper. I'd laminate it and put it in this book so I could compare ads, what their specials are. And man, I looked at the amount of money I spent back in the early days on marketing. Geez, and no wonder why I had a lot of students.
Yeah, absolutely. But I just want everybody to know that the marketing budget is for marketing in totality.
Right.
So it's not just, your Facebook ads and your Google pay-per-clicks and those type of things. So that's the next percentage. And look, I already said it, but in order to grow, you need to be at that 20% mark. If you want to grow.
Right. I love
it. And
the
only way that you can back off of your marketing is if your retention is really, really high. And the only way that you would know that, you need to go back and listen to one of our podcasts with regards to what your retention percentages should be. But then you can pull back because you have your retention. But everybody loses students, so we've got to make sure that we're visible.
Yeah, and it's also about the your goals of growth. Like, okay, let's just say your retention is great, but you want to still continue to grow your numbers and have way more students, then you should keep the marketing going. Like in the early days when I first started, I mean, there was not a rock unturned in my town that I didn't market on. I was on the bus benches, I was on the buses, I was in the bus top thing where it had all the different pictures on it. I was on the back of supermarket receipts. I was on the shopping carts. Like anything that I could put my name on to get the town to know who I was, I did. And I would my phone was off the hook ringing for trials because I had so many irons in the fire out there marketing. And by the way, you don't have to spend a lot of money to market. Like I have a lot of clients that I'll say, hey, you need to market. Get a flyer made and go hand it out, go put it out in stores, put it out on in a pizza parlor. And a lot of people are just too busy. They're too busy for their own good. They don't have the time.
And, look, I look at our CRM, so Spark, I look at that as it's a 50-50 split. Yeah. So 50% of that for me goes to marketing. Mm-hmm. Just as an FYI to people. So if you're thinking about, what is all considered with marketing, 50% of my CRM, I just divide it straight down the line just to make the numbers easy. 50% of it goes to marketing.
Okay. That's great.
So, that's awesome. And then the other one is your payroll.
Right.
So a great number to be at is 40% of your gross profit, but not more than 50% of your gross profit going to payroll.
Right. Okay. Yeah, and that has reduced for me since I got Spark. Like I was able to get rid of many people that I used to have employed, like program managers and things like that I no longer needed because I do it all from my home through Spark or through automations. But now I'm thinking to myself, maybe I should get like a counter person, a front desk person to just be there to talk to clients. But I'm normally there, or my staff members, my other assistant instructor or head instructors there. And but you're right though, but you got to be careful. Like, what's your payroll, the minimum wage in your state?
Minimum wage 18 and older right now is $14. Next year it'll be 15.
We just went up to 16. So that even I have some 14-year-olds that have their working papers and they're making, they work, let's say 3 or 4 hours. They're making themselves, $60, $70.
Well, underage for us, if they're under 18, they have a different pay schedule.
Oh, okay. You see, New York straight.
About $2. It's about $2 less.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so payroll could quite easily and quickly get gobbled up, your profitability. And then when I started running multiple schools, I was very, very generous with paying people absorbent amount of money, running schools for me, and they were making $80,000, $90,000 a year, company cars, retirement plans. And I felt good about it. And I loved the fact that I was building this company that could afford to do that. However, if I didn't do that, I could think about how much more, like even if I cut it back by 25%, let's say, of what I was paying, I would have so much more money stocked away and in savings, So you got to be careful that you just don't pay because you think you should, top dollar. I found that money is not the thing that keeps people with you. It's not only the amount of money they make.
Oh, definitely. And, the other part too is, as for us, the type of business that we run, some of us will go, oh, hey, you know what? You don't have to pay me your monthly tuition.
Right.
Just teach for me.
Right.
And I'm not going to tell anybody what to do, but I will tell you what I do.
Okay.
And I decided a long time ago that if somebody was going to work for me, I was going to pay them.
Right.
And if I was training somebody, they were going to pay me.
Right.
And that's just the decision I made, because I wanted everything to be, hate to use this word, above board.
Right.
But I wanted it to be that way because I was giving a service and they were paying me for a service.
Yeah.
They were, they were giving me a service. I was paying them for their service. And
right.
I like that, even from an employee and employer standpoint. It gives me a little bit more leverage with them being an employee and not just, a student coming in. Because I just feel like sometimes when the student you're treating, the student then that's coming in is like, well, I'm doing them a favor. And they forget about the fact that we're giving them training for free.
Yeah, and I have found over the years that barter never works. Like Mrs. Smith, she's broke. She just got divorced. She doesn't have any money. I'll have her deliver the flyers, or she's going to clean the dojo for me. And then they never clean like they're supposed to. And not never. I mean, you'll find some that will do it. So whenever I've done barter, I've said, okay, you get, $17 an hour. I'll pay you for the cleaning. And then you're going to pay me out of that for your tuition. If you want, I don't have to actually give you the money. We could stock it up until you can afford to pay for that month's tuition. But there's got to be a real clear understanding and equal transfer of equity. And that's why I like what you're saying, though, because I'd rather, like, all my team members that are paid, they get paid for teaching, and I get paid for tuition.
Yep. Yeah. The next percentage is 10%. So that's miscellaneous expenses.
Okay.
So what is a miscellaneous expense? That's going to be your toilet paper, your Pine Sol, all the way to, the mats that you need to repair, or, just all the miscellaneous expenses that come with a martial arts school. The paper that you need,
right,
through your printer and those type of things. Just all of that are your miscellaneous expenses. Any tech that I got to buy a new iPad this month because the other one is out of date or old and we need a new one. I mean, those are all miscellaneous expenses.
Okay. All right. I like that. And, that's always good to guesstimate those so you have an idea so that you're not caught off guard, right? So like I was telling my clients that I was talking to the other day, they're like, well, every month changes. I said, well, not really. Like the majority of your month's bills are going to be identical. But you may have, I had to fix my car, or the oil heater went on the building. Those are going to be expenses that you can't ever guesstimate. We call that in the Stephen Covey, Franklin Covey time management system. We call those mini fires. Like the fire comes up, you can't just leave it burning in the garbage bill. You got to take the time to put it out. So you got to pay that bill. But at the same time, it comes up. So you should guesstimate by putting certain money in a discretionary fund of some sort to cover that when they do come up.
You read my mind. So that's part of your 10% that you may not have a 10% expense. Maybe you only had an 8% expense with miscellaneous, but you're putting 2% back, like you said, in some sort of fund. Yeah. That's your oh crap fund. that you have for later on. You're, putting out the fire fund. Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say that, so I'm glad that you said it.
I'm glad we're thinking on the same wavelength like we always do. We've been doing this for so damn long. Like, like I think that we tend to read each other's minds at times. But yeah, it's interesting too that also should be like if you were a landlord and you had a bunch of tenants, you want to be taking a percentage of what your rent roll, your profit margin every month. You want to take that 10% from, let's say, if you have 10 buildings, 10% from every building and put it into a fund. God forbid the refrigerator breaks or the oil burner or, the washing machine. Now you're not like, oh my God, where do I have that money? Do I have to take it out of my personal savings? No, you should be able to take it out of that discretionary fund, that rainy day, when it all hits the fan kind of fund. And sometimes you build up a large amount of money in there because maybe you're not having to use it, but you should keep it in there just in case, God forbid.
Absolutely. And then, so if you add up all these percentages, at most, everything should be a 90% expense.
Right. Yeah, I think we had 80.
At best, it would be 80%. The variable comes with regards to your payroll.
Right.
And so, if your payroll is at 40%, then you're actually your net profit is 20%. If your payroll is at 50%, then your net profit is, only 10%. And only is not bad.
Right.
But when you start categorizing everything in these categories, so meaning, again, rent, marketing, payroll, and then miscellaneous, and then net profit, you're going to be able to then see, where you are doing good,
right,
where you need some improvement,
yeah,
in order to make the net profit that you would like to make.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're doing it by the percentages, the numbers, like you said, the numbers don't lie.
Right.
You won't fall in a category of need like you have in the past. I've been there.
Right.
Where it was like, oh my gosh, I need to do 2 paid in fulls just to, have enough money at the end of the month, as opposed to having too much month at the end of my money.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And by the way, that's what I love about Spark Dashboard.
I was going to say that. Go for it.
I watch it and this is what I do. And my clients don't normally do this. I don't know why, but I do it for them. So maybe that's why. But I track their stats. Each of my clients that I do coaching with, I track their monthly stats compared to the year before and the year prior. So like, okay, this year they made less than they did last year, or this year they made more, and by the end of the year, how much are they over or are they under? And then we start at week 2 of the month, where we start going, listen, you're a little shy on retail. You're really not doing any retail. You need to step that up a bit, or you haven't done any upgrades, or you haven't done any parents' night outs. Like I said to one of my clients the other day, you haven't done a buddy week in quite some time. He's like, no, I just did it not too long ago. I said, when was the last time? He says, oh, October. I go, you do realize it's April right now, right? October, November, December, January, February, March, April. That's like 6 to 7 months that you haven't done a buddy week. Those should be done at least every 6 to 8 weeks. You want to try to do a buddy week of some sort, some themed big promotion buddy week, like we did. With the most insane thing was our, martial art appreciation month, International Martial Art Appreciation Month, which you and I got to brainstorm and put that together so all the other schools could benefit from that.
Well, I know Dave Kovar seemed pretty interested when we had him on. So
yes, definitely. So that's that's something that they should be looking at, and they should be guesstimating, like, hey, I'm a little under this month. How can I get my numbers up? Like, you can't be the guy who's in a sailboat and just not put your sails up because you think that the weather's not so good, right? Or the wind is too slow.
Well, and look, the other thing I like about Spark is it gives you your projected gross profit
right
for the next month.
Yeah.
The thing that I would, like, on top of that I would suggest people do, especially if they have Spark, but maybe they have a system that does this, is you need to go back in history.
Yeah.
Just take the last 2 years, if you can. And, well, you probably can't. Maybe you need to start right now. But go through and see what your projected is, and then what your delinquents are at the end of every month, and find out what that percentage is.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is, and then keep that for 12 months. In fact, I would do that every single month, starting this month and then on. But within 1 year, you'll have a overall percentage going, okay, in 1 year's time, on average, there's 2% of my gross profit that doesn't come in.
Right.
That it's projected, but it's always later. It never comes in.
Yeah.
Because, and the reason that would be important is because then you can go back, and so when you see what your projection is, you go, okay, I know I'm projected to have 20,000, but I also know that I don't. There's 2% that I never get.
Right.
So I'm only now really going to make I don't know what the percentage is, but you know what I'm saying. I'm only really now going to make X, and so then you know what you need to make up in order to just make that projection.
Yeah, well, I do that quite simply. Like, I actually did it for one of my clients yesterday. I use an Excel spreadsheet. I have it laid out where it has all the years, 2021, 2, 3, 4, right? And then I went through Spark on their dashboard, and it's quite easy because you could go in depending on, and I can't believe it. I've been with Spark since 2018. That's how long ago I started with Spark. It doesn't seem that long, like holy mackerel, right? Time goes by quick. But I go into the report that I love, which is called the Gross Financial History Report. And I can see all the years in a graph, like, what I did in 2018, 2019, and so on. I could see how I did and how I trended up or down. Like, you could see a major dropout in 2019 to 20 when COVID hit. Like, what a major catastrophe that was, right? Like, it was a big drop. Like, I mean, I literally went down to like $4,000 in tuition in June of 2018, 19, that COVID year. Crazy, right? So it's insane. Yeah. But then we bounced back up again, like after we started growing and we were allowed to get out of that, quarantine or whatever it was. But I love that form. And then you go in and you look at it and you go like, oh, this month I did this. Last year, that to date, I did that. And you could say, okay, am I trending upward or downward? Am I having a slow year? And if I'm having a slow year, a lot of people just accept the fact that it's a slow year. I don't. I double marketing, or I boost my marketing. I go out, like for instance, I always try to beat my monthly numbers. So I'm like, okay, I'm 2,000 under from what I was last year. Let's just pretend. I'll go, okay, I got to get on gear sales, weapon sales, and special event sales. And I'll promote the hell out of it. And then I'll make up that number. So this year I'm on target to be every single month I've trended and beat. I was up by, 20% every month so far this year than I was last year. And last year was my best year in a while. So I'm hoping that this year comes up another 20 to 30% higher than last year. I just don't want to have to pay taxes on it, but
well,
I will.
Just you got to have more expenses. That's the problem.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, of course, that that's where you got to look at your numbers to be able to know where you're going. So, what would you say? Let's talk a little bit because we're already 40 minutes into the podcast. What would you say if you have a 20 or 10 to 20% left over, like your profit? You paid all your bills, you've done everything in your personal life, and your business life is all paid in full. You have 20% left over. What would you recommend to clients that are doing well, what they should be doing? Any tips?
Well, again, I think that falls back on their values, and the reason I say their values is, what is it that they want out of their future, and where do they want to be?
Right.
So there needs to be a certain percentage, I believe, that again you're putting back for your oh crap fund.
Yeah.
That we talked about before. With regards to, I don't know, the mats need to be replaced, or whatever happens inside of your studio. And then I was going to say the other one too that you need to have money back for is all of your deductibles for insurance. So if you have, let's just say you have $1,000 deductible on a couple of different insurances, so it means maybe you need a total of $4,000. That needs to be all put back away, so that if the crap hits the fan and you need it, you've got that already allocated. It would take you time to build that up, but allocate that and make sure that that is there. So those would be the first things is to do that. The other thing I would say is if you can build up, a 6-month supply of expenses for your school, and that's going to take you a few years to build that 6-month supply of expenses for your school, meaning that if every single student left you, which is not going to happen, but every single student left you for 6 months, you actually could pay.
Well, it could happen, right? Because look, it did happen to us, right? It could happen where we had COVID came in, and the unthinkable happened where in New York, especially, they were like, you can't operate your business. You're locked in the house. Don't come out. And if you come out, you'll get arrested. If you try to run your business, you'll get arrested. And now that I look back on that, I probably should have just ignored it. But at the same time, I complied and I taught from Zoom, and we did really well, you and I, with that. We shared. You taught for me. I taught for you. We did all these fun events. However, my income, like I said before, dropped dramatically. Like I lost like 65% of my business. Right? That's hard. So how much do you need to survive? And that's important, because some people live high on the hog. They got, fancy cars, big expenses, high mortgages. If, what's that saying? I think it's like the average American is 2 paychecks away from bankruptcy.
Yeah.
So they lose their job. You got 2 months. That's it before they're in trouble, right? Serious trouble. So, you want to start looking at that.
Yeah. So I would do that first. I would create all those little nest eggs, if you will. And then after that, then you can make the decision. You have 6 months of all your expenses. You have your deductibles already, put away and those type of things. Then I would look into, how do I want to invest this money within my business? Do I want to, utilize this to open a second location? Mm-hmm. Do I want to, buy a building? That goes back to what your values are. Mm-hmm. So I think those are all personal, where you decided at one time, I'm going to take this net profit and I'm going to buy a building. Yeah. And maybe somebody else would go, I'm going to take this net profit and I'm going to invest it. Mm-hmm. So I'll pay it outright to me personally, and then I'll invest it. Maybe, whatever. So I don't want to give people
financial advice.
Yeah, because I can't. But I think it's just really what does it come down to your values? But the nice thing is now you have options when you run your business on these percentages, and then you build up those nest eggs. Then you have options. Right. And I can assure you, with money in the bank, the stress level drops. Mm-hmm. Without money in the bank, and again, money's not everything, but it's certainly, I remember Zig Ziglar saying this, I've had money and I haven't had money, and quite frankly, it's much better to have money.
Yeah. Well, it does. You're right though, Dwayne. I think knowing, it's funny. I get those solicitor calls and they're like, "Hi, Mr. Alberigo." I'm like, "Yeah, who's this?" Well, we want to loan you $500,000. I'm like, "I don't need it, buddy." And people get nasty. I'm like, I have money put away. If I ever need it, I could fund my own loans, but I don't need it right now. Oh, and then they get mad at me. They're like, "Oh, okay, big shot." And, go to hell, and they'll hang up on me. Like, they're rude and angry because I don't need their offer that they're doing. But it's very important that you don't have too much overhead. You don't live higher than your means. You can't, I call it the rock star mentality. I've had many friends that were famous rock stars, and, they have a hit album. They make a ton of money. They go out and buy this mansion because album 2 is coming out in 6 months, and it's going to be a bigger success than album 1 because now they're famous and they're touring the world. And then that album bombs. Now they're selling their cars, selling their homes, and they don't have a career anymore because they didn't take that money and invest it. I know of a few rock stars that were so shrewd with their money, and they're loaded, because they would just make it, stock it away. Live a very minimal lifestyle, make it, and stock it away. Now that they're older and retired, they're set for life. So you got to be careful with that. And, everybody in our industry, not everybody, a lot of people in our industry tend to go, hey, I just made a lot of money. I'll renovate, I'll buy, I'll fix, I'll do new mats, I'll do this, I'll do that. And they spend what they make. I got 2 pay-in-fulls. I'll use that for, this, and then they blow it. And then it doesn't come back unless you cash out someone else. Right. So you got to be real careful that you don't use the money, unwisely.
Yeah, frivolously.
Yeah, exactly.
Just
That's
because you have it. Well, and that there is dopamine that happens when we buy stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's why Amazon suggests stuff for your cart all the time.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm a compulsive Instagram and Amazon purchaser. Like,
well, think about it. How many times have you talked about something that you don't own, and then you open up Facebook and there's an ad there?
It's amazing, right? Check it out. You see this guitar behind me right here, this white one?
Yep.
Yeah, that's it kind of looks a little blue because I have my blue lights on. I bought that in the middle of the night in my sleep. So I wanted it for a long time. I must have been to the page 30 times. I selected all the things that I wanted on the guitar. And then I woke up the next morning and I go to my wife, Nicole, I think I bought that guitar last night. Let me check, Yep. It was a receipt in my inbox. So like it had me going. I was half asleep because I sleep like crap anyway. I woke up in the middle of the night and I bought $1,000 guitar. And I love it. It's my favorite guitar, by the way. And I'm so glad I did. But it was wild that, that's how that happens, and you're right. The dopamine rush of having it and going and purchasing it and so on. So you got to be real careful. I think school owners have to be conservative. And I'll give one other bit of advice. I know we're running a little bit low on time, but you can negotiate your bills as well, right? So I would say every 2 months, you should take the time to review all your expenses and see which ones are negotiable. So like, for example, I don't know what you're paying. Like right now, I'm trying to get we have Optimum Online is our cable company in my school. I pay $220 a month to just have internet and 2 phone lines, which I rarely use the phone. We don't get any calls. Everything goes to my cell phone. And you and I talked about that. I'm going to do that company that you got, and I'm going to go with 5G wireless Wi-Fi with T-Mobile, $49 a month. I'll be saving with the phone and the cable. I'll be at maybe like $65, $70 versus $200.
Yep.
And I'm penny pinching, right? It sounds like, if he's doing well, why is he worried? But you save yourself, $100 and $30 times 12 months. That's like, what is that? 13, 14, 15, like $1,600 that I'd rather put that in and buy my daughter or my wife something versus just give it to the cable company.
Well, it's not penny pinching in a bad sense. What it is it is really stewarding the money that you have. Yeah. And when you take your eyes off of that, you start to buy other things that I'm not getting on you with the guitar, but you start to buy other things without thinking about the consequences of that.
Absolutely.
So it was oh gosh, what's his name? It's your real estate guy that you like.
Grant Cardone.
Yeah, Grant Cardone talks about wake up, go to bed broke,
right,
and wake up hungry.
Right.
I mean, that's out of his Obsessed book or whatever it's called.
Yeah, 10X or whatever.
Yeah, 10X. Go to bed broke.
Yeah.
And wake up every morning hungry. Well, how do you go to bed broke? You go to bed broke with the mindset of I've pinched every single penny that I can. That's the way I look at it. I've accounted for everything.
Right.
I've tried to decrease everything that I can decrease without it having a negative effect.
Right.
And look, if you can still get the same services that you're wanting and needing for lesser, why wouldn't you?
Yeah, and think about it like, I had no idea until you and I had talked about this phone system that you use, and I'm like, wow, that's all you pay? Like I'm paying like triple, quadruple of what you're paying. And you're like, yeah, you could, and you sent me to the website and it's just makes sense. So like That's why I say look at your expenses and negotiate. Like if people have rentals and they rent from a storefront, every year the rent doesn't have to go up. You could always talk to your landlord and say, listen, would you negotiate down? I'll sign another 5-year lease if you drop the rent to this, and then we'll build from there. Like there's always ways to negotiate. They may say no, but it doesn't hurt to ask. It doesn't hurt to get your cable company on the phone and say, listen, I've gotten other offers. I'm about ready to cancel. Get me to the retention specialist and let's see what we could do.
That's the key. I love that verbiage, retention specialist. Everybody listen to that.
Yeah.
That's what you want to ask, because we have Dish Network here at our house. And of course, our contract is ended and then it went up on price. So my wife got on the phone and she goes, send me to your retention specialist. And boy, we got our price. It went up just a little bit because I knew the price was going to go up. But it is like, I don't know, $25 difference compared to what they were going to charge us. Yeah.
Yeah. We just did that with our phone service and they gave me my mother-in-law. I have a lot of people on my phone. I have my T-Mobile. It's me, my wife, my daughter, my mother-in-law, and my team member Ryan, who runs its dojo with me. So there's 5 of us. So they had a deal where you could get free brand new iPhones. So I got the iPhone 14 or whatever the new one is. And it was like you add on a line for $20 and you get 2 telephones, $2,000 phones for free. So I'm like, okay, add on the line for $20. It saved me all that money. It saved me $2,000, but I would have known that unless my wife went and asked those questions and said, hey, what are the specials that you have going on? And then you end up saving money. So again, just review and audit and look at your bills, all of the expenses, and say, hey, like, and by the way, I'm a big, I don't know if you are too, Dwayne, where I buy everything on Amazon for my dojo, like the toilet paper, the paper towels, the hand soap, and I have it on a monthly subscription or every other month or whatever it is. And or when you need it, you could set it up and it'll just be on your doorstep. And I'm going like, wow, I must be out of toilet paper, and I'll look, and inevitably, because I've figured it out, I needed it. But you can also, Amazon is cheap too these days. At times you could buy stuff very inexpensively. And if you have Amazon Prime, you don't pay shipping. And it's crazy. I order stuff sometimes in the early morning. I was in Florida at my house down there. I ordered something and at night it was on my doorstep. Not even a full day went by.
Yeah, if they have it in the warehouse, you'll get it. Yeah,
it's amazing, right? It's crazy. But anyway, what else do you have to think? Any other thoughts?
I just wanted to recap real quick, with regards to the percentages. So again, if you didn't write them down the first time, write them down right now. No more than 10% of your rent or gross profit, excuse me. No more than 10% of your gross profit should go to rent. Mm-hmm. Marketing, no more than 20%. And really, you really need to be at 20% if you want, 18 to 20% is where you want to be in order to grow your school.
Right.
Payroll, no more than 40 to 50% of your payroll. And then miscellaneous expenses, up to 10% with that. And then, so that should give you a gross profit of anywhere between 10 to 20%. So your gross profit should never drop below 10%. Mm-hmm. But in essence, should never be higher, depending, should never be higher than 20%. But of course it can be, so if you're able to build your school from 20 to 30,000, let's just say per month, and your expenses are still the same, of course your net profit is going to shoot up.
Right.
So that percentage might change. It might not be 10% anymore. It might be 20%, or it might not be 20% anymore. It might be 25%. That's okay, as long as you're hitting the other percentages, appropriately. So don't feel bad, because obviously your rent, if you lock it in, like Ali said, I locked it in and negotiated for 5 years. That's not going to increase. It's going to stay the same. Where you have the percent, or you have the possibility of your student body to increase. So of course you can make more money. Right. So I don't want you to think that your net profit can't increase, because it can. Right. But those other percentages, no more than 10% of rent, no more than 20% for marketing, and no more than 40 to 50 for your payroll, and then 10% miscellaneous.
Absolutely. I love it. That was a great call. I think that a great show, that a lot of really great information. I hope people will listen to it a few times, take a pad and pen out, write some things down and, take advantage of the knowledge that we just threw out there.
And go and do your percentages.
Right.
I mean, and just real quickly, what I've done is, because I have a bookkeeper, so I don't even do my books.
Right.
That goes into miscellaneous expenses, by the way.
Okay.
But or payroll, depending. But anyways, what I've had her do is take these things and we categorize them. So we have the categories for rent. We have the categories for marketing. Of course, payroll is its own category anyways, but miscellaneous. And of course, I have subcategories inside of miscellaneous. I have subcategories for marketing. But the overall are those different segments. And then I can go in and I can see right away, every month I get a report that I can go back and I can look at so that I can see where my money is being spent. And I know what the percentages are happening. So
right.
If you're not doing your books yourself and you're having somebody else do it, you need to create that framework for them to follow so that you can, be able to actually see the percentages. Does that make sense?
Totally does. And you also should have a good accountant that you could be able to ask these questions to, because hopefully they're not just a number pusher and filling out forms for you, but you could ask them strategically, hey, like, for example, if I did this or I did that, could I save or, could I, pay down debt to save on taxes or whatever the case may be. You really should ask. Hopefully you have an accountant that will do that, share that knowledge with you and help you save you money.
Yeah. The only thing is that they're not going to be able to know what the percentage structure should be in a martial arts school.
Right.
That's the only thing.
Right. Exactly.
So although I will say in most businesses that I've helped, because I've helped other businesses, not just, martial arts schools, with this framework, they've done very well.
That's great.
Framework. Because there's been a couple of chiropractic places and then some other places as well. But I just use this framework. I go, look, this is what works for me. Let's use this framework in your business. And they've been successful. So I found that this framework is at least, I don't want to say universal, but it is flexible enough to be able to use in other businesses as well.
Oh, yeah. I think most businesses are the same. Some might be more material hungry, like, you have a construction company and a good percentage is in materials, then, that kind of thing. But they're all similar, right? Business is business.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right, my friend. Well, thank you.
Thank you. I'll talk to you soon. By the way, next week we won't be on because I'll be on vacation. I'll be down at my house in Florida, but we'll get on there, the following week if it's okay with you.
Absolutely. Enjoy the weather, sir.
All right. Thanks. See ya. Bye.
All right, bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Martial Arts School Owner Talk podcast. This would not be possible if it weren't for the support of our amazing sponsors. Please check out Elite Insights for all your website needs. They can be reached at eliteinsights.com. Add Health Coaching, helping school owners create a new and easy to implement revenue stream for your school. Visit addhealthcoaching.com. Lead Hunter Media, your online digital marketer and content provider. Visit leadhuntermedia.com. Academy Kings Growth Consulting and Management Group. They can be reached at academykings.com. And Spark Membership, hands down the best martial arts software for school owner management on the planet. They can be reached at sparkmembership.com. We will see you next time.